Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tuning into the very heartbeat of music, rhythm, and meter.
That's right. It's the fundamental pulse that organizes sound. You could say it's the lifeblood that gives music its drive, its feel.
And we know you, our listener, want to get a solid grasp on things efficiently. So our mission today is to really explore this foundational territory.
Yeah, give you a solid, insightful understanding, but hopefully without, burying you in overly technical stuff.
We want to unpack how time is organized in music, really get into it.
Exactly. We'll start with the core component, the beat itself. Then look at how beats group together into meter.
And then get into the more complex stuff, like variations.
Right, rhythmic complexity, how we perceive it all, and even how rhythm sounds completely different across various cultures. It's quite a journey.
Okay, so let's dive right in. The beat. This is the bedrock, isn't it?
Absolutely, that steady pulse underneath everything. The thing you tap your foot to almost without thinking.
Like a clock ticking or, like we said, your own heartbeat, that kind of regular pulse.
Precisely. And the speed of that pulse, that's what we call tempo.
Right, tempo, measured in BPM.
Beats per minute. And you often hear those Italian terms used, don't you? Largo, adagio, andante.
Moderato, allegro, presto. They cover the whole range from really slow to super fast.
They do. And they're not just labels for speed. They often imply a certain character, a mood, slow tempos for calmness or sadness, faster ones for excitement or urgency.
That makes sense, like adagio meaning at ease. That suggests more than just slowness.
Exactly. It often appeared in these expressive, slow movements that were meant to evoke tranquility. There's a whole historical weight there.
Interesting. And it's not just rigid like a metronome clicking away, is it? The beat can breathe a bit?
Oh, definitely not always rigid. Performers and composers use tempo expressively all the time.
How so?
Well, to build excitement, they might speed up gradually, that's accelerando,
Ah, okay.
or to create emphasis, maybe towards the end of a phrase, they might slow down retardando.
So it gives the beat a kind of living, flexible quality.
It really does. Much more organic than just a machine.
Okay, so we've got this fundamental pulse, the beat, and its speed, the tempo. But how do we get from just a steady tick-tock to the actual feel of music? How does it get organized?
That brings us to meter. Meter is all about how those individual beats are grouped together.
Grouped.
Yeah, into regular recurring patterns. It provides the structure, the sort of architectural blueprint for the rhythm, gives it shape, a feel.
Okay, so what are the main ways these beats get grouped? What are the common patterns?
Well, in Western music, there are a few really dominant ones. First, you've got duple meter.
Duple, like two.
Exactly. Beats grouped in twos. Think of a march, left, right, left, right. That pattern fits perfectly.
Makes sense. Any other examples of duple?
There's also 22 times, sometimes called alla breve, still groups of two, but it often feels faster, more driving than, say, a typical march might, less heavy.
Got it. Strong sense of two. What's next?
Then there's triple meter, grouping in threes.
Threes. Like a waltz?
The waltz is the classic example, that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
It gives it that characteristic swaying, almost lilting feel. You can really feel the three beats.
Yeah, you definitely can. Okay, so twos and threes, what else is common?
The other big one is quadruple meter, grouping in fours.
And that's the most common one, right? Especially in pop music.
By far, especially 44 time. It's so common. It's often just written as a C for common time. It's the backbone of a huge amount of Western music.
Now, within these groups, twos, threes, fours, it's not like every beat sounds the same, is it? There's emphasis, accents.
Good point. No, they don't all feel equal. Within any meter, some beats naturally get more stress, more emphasis than others. And these accents are key to the feel of the meter.
So in 44, for example.
In 44, typically the first beat gets the strongest accent. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's usually a slightly weaker accent on the third beat, too.
And that first strongest beat has a name, right?
It does. We call it the downbeat. It anchors the whole pattern.
Okay, so meter gives us this predictable framework. Beats grouped together with regular accents. That must be really important for musicians playing together.
Absolutely crucial for synchronization. And for us as listeners, it sets up expectations. We start to feel that underlying pattern.
But music isn't always perfectly predictable, is it? The interesting stuff often happens when those expectations get played with.
Exactly. And that leads us nicely into rhythmic complexity. Things like syncopation.
Syncopation, that's when the rhythm feels off-kilter, unexpected.
That's a great way to put it. Syncopation is basically accenting beats, or even bits of beats, that would normally not be accented in the meter.
Ah, so stressing the weak beats instead of the strong ones?
Precisely. Or accenting the ands between the main beats. It creates this little jolt, a surprise. It can add excitement or maybe a bit of tension. It disrupts the expected flow.
Like a dance step that comes just a little earlier or later than you expect.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. It catches your ear because it deviates from that established pulse. And it can happen on a small scale, just one offbeat note, or with whole phrases that feel displaced against the main beat.
Well, so that adds interest. What about even more complex layers? You mentioned polyrhythms earlier.
Yes, polyrhythms. Now we're getting into some really fascinating territory.
So what defines a polyrhythm?
It's when you have two or more different rhythmic patterns, or even different meters, happening at the same time.
At the same time. Wow, like one part playing in 3 while another plays in 4?
Exactly like that. It's like different instruments or voices are locked into their own distinct rhythmic worlds simultaneously.
That sounds like it could create a really rich, maybe even confusing texture.
It can be incredibly rich. It definitely challenges our brain's tendency to find one single, simple pulse. It creates this amazing rhythmic depth and complexity.
Where do we typically hear polyrhythms?
They're fundamental to a lot of music from Africa. You hear these incredible interlocking patterns creating dense, driving rhythms. But they've also been absorbed into Western music, too. You hear them in jazz quite a bit, in some rock, and definitely in contemporary classical music. It adds groove, sophistication.
Sure.
That 4 against 3 example is a classic polyrhythm used in many genres.
So our ears are picking up all this rhythmic data, the beat, the meter, syncopation, maybe even polyrhythms. How does our brain actually make sense of it all? What's going on inside our heads?
That's a really deep question. Perceiving rhythm isn't just one thing. It's partly physical, our ears detecting the sound waves, the timing differences.
Right.
But it's also hugely psychological. Our brain takes that raw input and actively works to interpret it, to find patterns, to organize it into something meaningful. It involves quite a network of brain regions working together.
You mentioned an internal clock in the outline. What is that exactly? Is it one spot in the brain?
It's not really one spot, no. Think of it more like a distributed system, a network across the brain. This network allows us to perceive the beat, anticipate when the next beat should come, and understand the larger metrical structure.
So different parts handle different jobs related to timing.
Sort of, yeah. Some areas might be more involved in tracking the basic pulse, others in recognizing the meter, others in processing the really fine-grained timing details. It's a collaborative effort.
And what affects how well this internal clock works, or how we experience rhythm?
Well, several things. Attention is a big one. If you're really focusing on the music, your brain processes all that timing information much more accurately.
Makes sense. What else?
Expectation plays a huge role. Based on music you've heard before, your brain builds models of how rhythms usually work. So when something deviates, like syncopation, it really stands out.
Ah, so our past listening experience shapes how we hear rhythm now.
Definitely. And interestingly, our emotional state can subtly shift our perception of time. You know how time seems to fly when you're excited or drag when you're sad? That can slightly color how we perceive rhythm too.
Wow. And culture, does that influence it?
Massively. Our cultural background deeply shapes what rhythmic patterns sound normal or right to us, how complex we perceive certain rhythms to be, and what kinds of rhythms we find engaging or meaningful.
So it's this complex mix of the physical sound, our brain's processing, our focus, our history, our emotions, and our culture.
That's a great summary. Rhythm is felt physically. It's often visceral, makes you want to move, but it's also processed mentally, triggering all sorts of responses and connections.
It's really striking when you think about it. Rhythm is universal in music, but the way it's expressed varies so incredibly much around the world.
It really does. While Western music, historically anyway, leaned heavily on those regular, fairly straightforward meters like 44 or 34, that's just one slice of the pie.
Just one approach among many.
Exactly. If you look globally, you find this absolutely stunning diversity in rhythmic patterns, meters, and how rhythm is used in performance. It reflects such a richness of human culture and different ways of experiencing time itself through sound.
Can you give us a few snapshots, different rhythmic worlds?
Sure. Let's take some African musical traditions, for instance. As we touched on, polyrhythm is often absolutely central. You get these complex, interlocking layers, often heavily percussive.
Lots of drums.
Often, yes. And syncopation isn't necessarily a deviation. It's frequently woven right into the fabric of the groove, feeling completely natural and essential. It creates this incredibly dense, dynamic texture.
Sounds amazing. What about, say, India?
Indian classical music has this highly sophisticated system of rhythmic cycles called talas.
Talas.
Yes, these aren't just simple meters. They can be very long and intricate, with complex ways of dividing the beat within the cycle. Musicians learn to count them using specific hand gestures, even spoken syllables. The tala provides the whole rhythmic foundation for improvisation.
Wow, so the counting is almost part of the performance. Fascinating. Latin America, we associate that with a rhythm strongly.
Oh, absolutely. Latin American music is famous for its vibrant, often very syncopated rhythms. Layered percussion is key here, too. It creates that incredibly energetic, danceable feel.
Like specific patterns?
Exactly. You have foundational patterns like the clave rhythm, especially in Cuban music, or the rhythmic feel of styles like son or samba. Each has its own distinctive rhythmic DNA.
Okay, one more, the Middle East.
Middle Eastern music often uses rhythmic modes called ikat. These can involve complex meters, sometimes with unusual numbers of beats per cycle, like 5 or 7 or more.
Not just twos, threes, and fours, then.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You get these odd groupings, intricate syncopated accents. It creates a very distinctive, sometimes almost hypnotic rhythmic quality that can sound quite different to ears mostly accustomed to Western meters.
It really drives home that point, doesn't it? Western music's focus on regular meter is just one possibility out of countless ways humans organize musical time. The variety is incredible.
It truly is. It speaks volumes about human creativity and how central rhythm is to musical expression everywhere.
So just to wrap up our deep dive today, we've really journeyed through the core concepts. Rhythm and meter are fundamental, the pulse, the structure.
Right. And we saw how things get interesting with complexity syncopation, adding surprise polyrhythms, creating these rich layers.
And how we perceive it all is this fascinating mix of our ears, our brains, our attention, expectations, emotions, even our cultural background.
And finally, we touched on that incredible global diversity. Rhythm isn't monolithic. It's expressed in countless ways across cultures.
Which brings us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to maybe ponder. We've talked about how fundamental rhythm is, how deeply ingrained it seems to be in music, and maybe even in us.
Right. So the question is, does this inherent rhythm that we find so compelling in music, does it somehow reflect a deeper order in the universe itself? You know, like the cycles we see everywhere in nature, day and night, seasons, tides, planetary orbits.
Or is it more something we create, a construct of our own perception, our brain's way of finding patterns and making sense of the auditory world?
Are we tapping into some universal pulse when we make music, connecting with those larger cycles? Or are we primarily imposing our own human sense of order onto sound?
Is rhythm out there in the cosmos or in here in our minds? Or maybe both?
Something to think about. Is there a connection between the rhythm in a symphony and the rhythm of the stars?
A really thought-provoking place to leave it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the heartbeat of music.
Yeah, keep listening, not just to music, but to the rhythms all around you. They're everywhere.